Hi friends, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra here again in the conference room at the 338 Club at C2 Tactical in Scottsdale with attorney extraordinaire Tim Forshee. And we recently had a video on the big channel of officers pulling over a Boy Scout on his way to Bible study while he was delivering food to the homeless.
He was going to go donate a kidney or something.
Yeah, something like that. Dedicating his life to the Lord or something. But on the way there in his stolen vehicle, he gets pinched in by a couple of cops.
Which was, like, by the book, perfect. No lights on, kind of snuck up on him. It was
pretty
perfect.
good. Yeah. And then the officer has a negligent discharge right in the direction of his noggin.
Yep.
And missed him by that much. And we'll show it to you here in a second. But I want to talk with Tim about this double standard for a police officer doing that versus you and me.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below. Police have identified the van on the right here as a stolen vehicle. So you saw the cop drive by the other way. He's going to turn around, join in the chasing down of this guy. So now we have two officers, one in the front of him and one behind him. And the guy in the front decides it's time for a felony stop. So you see the officer behind, he's going to close in so the guy can't back up away from him. And then our officer in the front is going to come up as well. And as he jumps out of his car, let's listen into what happens.
Don't move! 24 shots fired. Don't move! Don't move! It's an ND. All right.
You heard the officer there admit that it was an ND, a negligent discharge, and it crossed right in front of the face of this perp. It was cleanup on aisle, white panel van for sure there for a minute. Our driver of the vehicle was arrested for receiving stolen property and several other crimes. So that's an interesting incident that goes down there, Tim, that, and at least I will say this, we said in the analysis, at least the officer owned it.
Yes, you got to be proud of him for that. Exactly right. He didn't, because he could have, I saw a gun or I saw a
he made a furtive gesture.
Yeah, and he didn't do that. And again, to his credit, that takes integrity, and God bless him for that. Yeah.
And okay, this is a kind of cop that will probably get a slap. He'll get a letter of reprimand and some retraining and those things. Now, I want to talk, different mission, right? Me as a private citizen, I am never going to pull somebody over who is a car thief, who is a fleeing felon. Right. I'm never going to do that. But if I had a negligent discharge that whizzed by somebody a few feet from their head, there's a good chance I'm catching felony charges.
I would say more than a good chance, yes.
Yeah. I mean, here in Arizona, a negligent discharge that leaves your property is often charged as a felony.
Well, in Arizona, any negligent discharge, it does not have to leave your property.
It's true.
Any negligent discharge is a Class 6 dangerous felony, which means that felony can never be set aside. You'll die a convicted felon.
Yes.
So they take a really, really dim view on negligent discharges here. And by the way, in the old days, we used to call them ADs, especially on the range, when we have somebody, he AD'd. Why did he get DQ'd? He AD'd.
Yeah, accidental discharge.
He ND'd. Okay, that was negligence. That was not an accident. There is an accidental discharge where it's usually a mechanical fault of the gun. It wasn't truly the shooter's fault. Okay, I'll call that one an AD, but those are really rare, especially these days with the quality of guns. So,
if you press the trigger and you did not mean to press the trigger,
that's negligence.
That happens because of negligence.
And let's be honest here, I'm not going to speak for my buddy, but the old saying is there are those of us gun owners who've had a negligent discharge, and there are those of us gun owners who will have a negligent discharge. Mine came in 1986. I put a hole in a tennis shoe against a baseboard in my apartment in law school. I'll never forget it. I laid on the floor for a half an hour, knowing I was going to be raped in prison for the rest of my life. I'd never be a lawyer. My parents would never speak to me again. And after a half hour, no sirens, I thank God I followed Rule 2 and put it into the baseboard in my apartment. I got up and very carefully walked down the hall so no fecal matter fell out of my underwear and hit the floor, and took a long hot shower, and then decided when I became an instructor that was a good story to share with people, even though it was embarrassing to me, because maybe I could help somebody else avoid that. But yeah, if I'd aimed that at my window instead of the baseboard in my apartment, I'd probably be getting out of jail right about now.
Yeah, so, we get stories all the time. Yeah. People, cleaning guns and having a negligent discharge, goes through their apartment wall, almost kills a neighbor. Going to catch big charges for that. Okay, but
Now, so then
Why not a cop?
Why not the officer?
We don't know for sure that it didn't happen. Do we know there was that he's got departmental discipline issues coming up, right?
Well, I would certainly assume so. Now,
I would too.
So here's the other part. You don't get to hear that stuff because guess what? Cops are union employees.
Right.
And so their personnel issues are private.
Correct.
Because they're union employees and that's part of their collective bargaining stuff. And so do we get to hear about the punishment meted out to the officer? Unless the officer gets fired for it, probably not.
Yeah.
Because again, there's a whole internal process and they're union employees. And so anybody here's ever worked for a union. If somebody has punishment for screwing something up at work, the rest of the employees don't get to hear about what was done.
I would expect, the scuttlebutt will let people know what's going on, but the official version will never be let out. And we all have friends who are cops who have friends who were disciplined for negligent discharges. And, whether it's in the locker room or God forbid out on the street, there are consequences. They usually get taken off patrol for a year, or maybe if it happens the second time. I have a friend of a friend it happened the second time, never work patrol again. He's behind a desk the rest of his career. They're essentially wanting to go ahead and retire early. He wants to put in a couple more years so his retirement looks better, but he's doing a very embarrassing job, and everybody there knows why he's doing that embarrassing job. So he's definitely disciplined, right? And I would assume this guy was too.
I'd assume so.
Yeah. But why isn't he prosecuted? I hate to look into a camera where, I'm still a practicing attorney in a county where prosecutors might hear this, but is there a double standard? Of course there is.
Yeah.
Of course there is. Now, a lot of people say the reason cops have been leaving in droves since 2020 is because there's this bias against cops, and cops are wrongfully persecuted and prosecuted. There's probably truth to both sides. It depends upon the political winds. But if it's a county where in Arizona we do felonies are primarily county jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. If it's a county where there's a good acting relationship between the attorney general or the county attorney and that local police department or that sheriff's office, they all kind of work on the same team, right? They work together every single day. And so, if we're going to throw that cop under the bus and go after him, the other cops lose respect for that department. And maybe now I won't even draw my gun, or maybe I'll just go ahead and not get out of the patrol car. And, it has a ripple effect. We don't want to dissuade police officers from doing their jobs, but at the same time, we want to make sure the public is as safe as possible. And it's a balancing act. And so do they put their thumb on the scale more with a public employee than they do with a civilian? What do you think? Of course they do.
Sure they do.
And that's probably not right, but there's a lot of things in our world I'd like to change. I don't know if that'd be the first one on my list. So you'd be a fool not to admit that these things happen, okay? And that because of the working relationship between the district attorney's office or the county attorney's office and the police department, that there's some quid pro quo going on there. And I can rationalize that if I'm a prosecutor, because I can say, well, I'm not going to punish him, but he's getting punished. Right? It's not as though he's walking free from this and there's no consequence. I don't need to pile on. I mean, I have a client in a case where he was involved in a DUI, and one of his passenger who was very dear to him died. And my theory on that case is, look, why are we punishing this guy? I'm surprised he hasn't committed suicide. He lost his job. He won't come out of his bedroom. What's the goal? How does it serve society to pile on him and punish him even more? And that's a legitimate point. And I think prosecutors are sensitive to that sometimes.
Well, and I know of several people in Maricopa County who have had negligent discharges, had those negligent discharges investigated, and had no charges filed.
And that's what we call prosecutorial discretion.
Yeah.
And God, if there were only more of it, right? If there's only what I would consider good discretion, you might consider bad discretion. But and that's, I think, one of the flaws in our system is that we get prosecutors who are just gung ho, conviction, and they don't really look at the human element, and they're not really concerned about whether that's the right thing to do. It's just prosecute. They have this, if all I have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. That situation. When you find a prosecutor that's not like that, they're awesome. They're a treat. And that's not to say that they're favoring the defense. They're just doing what I think society needs them to do. What should happen, and not all of them are like that, unfortunately.
Well, and I've had those cases where the prosecutor has charged with the felony and then let them sweat a few weeks so that we know that they have had the emotional turmoil.
Yeah, which is immense.
And then, all right, man, we're going to put you in a diversion program, and you are going to be a very good Boy Scout for the next 3 years. Yeah. And we're not going to hear a peep out of you.
We're giving you a giant break. Don't make us regret it.
Right. And yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I will be the bestest boy that ever did was. And
usually they are.
And they are.
And usually people get it. Yeah.
So I see private citizens get away with that pretty regularly. But of course, we see the high profile ones, right? Sure. We see a police officer streak one into the windshield, and that was dangerous.
Wow.
Now, cops point guns at people all the time. It's part of their job, and they do so at potential threat of physical harm.
Correct.
And so kind of, sort of, they get that extra leeway because of the usual nature of the job. But understand, I want all my officer friends to understand, if you ND and it hits somebody, the Supreme Court has decided unilaterally your qualified immunity is gone. And so you will personally deal with the financial repercussions of that, and you should, in my opinion. So what I said in the main channel analysis is, officers, low ready is your friend.
Amen. I mean, it all boils down to, whether you have 4 firearm safety rules or 3 or 5, it all boils down to, you don't point your gun at something you're not willing to destroy right then, and you keep your damn finger off the trigger until you're prepared to fire. And if that cop had followed, frankly, either of those 2 rules, but certainly rule 3, this would never happen.
Well, thank goodness his aim was bad.
Yeah, well, yeah. At the moment that the round was discharged, he wasn't completely on target, but he's pretty damn close. I think we both know he was aiming or in the process of getting to aim at that guy. And he is extremely fortunate that it missed. So.
Speculation for a moment from John. I don't remember if I said this on the main analysis. He's left-handed. We know that.
Oh, okay.
And
so he pulled low and right.
And the bullet went right.
Yeah.
And that happens when I get the gun out and I add pressure with the whole hand as I press the trigger. And so that was what we call fortuitous, crappy marksmanship. That's speculation on my part.
No, but that makes sense. That jives with the facts. Yeah.
Jives with what we saw happen there, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. And if so, I hope that he went home and said his prayers, and I hope that he went home and bought a lottery ticket. Either he's the luckiest man on earth, or he used up every bit of luck he ever had in his life, one way or the other.
And I don't think we know, but whether the wonderful church-going guy in the stolen vehicle was injured, because clearly the bullet didn't hit him, but we don't know that bullet fragments didn't hit him, the windshield spalling didn't hit him, because a lot of people realize that windshield disintegrates when a bullet hits it, and there's a whole lot of spalling going near the speed of sound coming into your face. He could have lost an eye. Could have permanent disfiguring scarring on his face. I don't know. I'm not saying he did, but
he didn't.
Guy, if he wasn't injured, was he lucky? Because he put a round into a windshield that was inches away from this guy's face. So, man.
And he didn't make it to Bible study that night.
No, I think he's still probably in a heap of trouble. So,
He's again enjoying the accommodations in a state-sponsored gated community today. There's that. So it doesn't bother me that this officer wasn't charged. I see people that are non-sworn get, they get a pass.
People get breaks sometimes.
People get breaks. Frankly, though, it wouldn't have bothered me had he gotten charged.
Well, me neither. I mean, because again, and you hate to throw this guy out to the wolves, but examples have to be made. I mean,
pretty gross negligence.
You guys don't get away with this just because you're cops, kind of a thing. I mean, that's rampant through our society right now, and that's not appropriate either. So
So is that a definitive answer?
No.
I don't have those all the time. The legal system is not full of definitives.
Very
it's
rare.
full of principles. Yeah. So, Tim, I appreciate the discussion.
Always. I'm just glad that the officer's safe and
everything worked out okay.
Worked out, yeah.